Okay, live video is starting. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Empower Hour. I'm only laughing because as we were talking about the topic, Coach Amy got way fired up. It's like, yeah, we're going to talk about that.
So you've got no idea what it is, but I'm fiery about it. So let's go
I've
there.
got no idea what it is, but you're fiery about it. And one of the things that I know is on Empower Hour, number one, we're going to make a difference for you people listening. And number two, you will be, if nothing else, you will be entertained. So Coach Amy, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what topic that we are going to be talking about this fine day.
So my name is Amy. I've been coaching longer than I can count right now. I was challenging myself the other day, actually, because I started my coaching business the end of 2015. And I was writing something. So my demographic has shifted. I'm totally a newbie. Well, but then you listen to the rest of this and you'll laugh at me even more. So I started my direct sales business with consultants, and I want a better word than underlings, but nothing is coming to my mind. So we're going to go with underlings.
We all know what that is. Yeah.
So when I was writing, so I've shifted recently and I work with coaches, consultants, and course creators. Now I've been creating courses for ages.
Right.
And I've been doing coaching for ages. But in terms of working with consultants, because I'm like, when did I first start working with consultants? I first started working with consultants to grow their business in 2004.
Okay, so I've been coaching since 2002, but if I think it along that way, as a general manager and as a sales manager, I've been coaching since before the turn of the century.
My first job as a consultant was 1997. And so I was just challenging myself to tap into, I've been doing this for way longer than I generally speak about. And obviously that's changed because I'm here speaking about it. But I've been doing it the reason for that wasn't that I was hiding it. It was just I hadn't connected the dots.
Right.
Which I think leads into where my passion is today around too many coaches, and probably businesses in general, but coaches, course creators, consultants is who I generally play with, but too many people are trying to turn something into a system or scale or have sustainability before they have owned their uniqueness and their power.
So today we're going to talk about owning your uniqueness and your power. And I like that because I have been, I mean, it's funny because I will say
before you attempt to scale.
Oh, before you attempt to scale. Oh, so do you think I own my power? Let's just start right there.
I would say you own elements of it.
I don't know.
And the majority of it.
That's fair.
I would say I still only own elements of mine too. I find new power all the time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need to have all of it.
Well, that's true, because if we waited until we'd have all of it, we'd be dead. How does one find their power?
So starting by identifying our uniqueness.
And so every coach that I know, not only do they all have a specific uniqueness, but they all have a market. And it's quite interesting because when I was in the advanced track of my coaching school, one of the teachers who has a very niched market, he basically said that you should be able to coach to anybody. And I'm not sure that I agree. I think there are so many coaches out there because I really think as we have emerged from a post-COVID society, the coaching market is exploding. And as it is, and I also think there are people that are seeking assistance. So how do you figure out what your uniqueness
Hang on, I want to, before I go to what the uniqueness is, I want to go to, as coaches, should we be able to coach anybody? And this is going to depend on whether you're more a coach or a mentor to start with.
Okay.
Going to depend on the definition of coaching. So if I have my purest coaching hat on, I can take that and I can coach anybody.
Anybody. Yeah.
Now, should I coach everybody? Hell no. But I have the skills and the tools and my coaching methodology. Literally any topic, any problem, anything could come to me. And I think this is the same for you too, Jim, with what I know of what you do in terms of coaching. The process that we use as a coach could be applied to any problem, any situation, any person.
I agree with you, it really can, but I have to say, like, for me, if someone has trauma, the deeper the trauma, like the easier.
You've honed in on where you prefer to play.
Yeah, where I prefer to play, because the lighter the trauma, we have no background and it makes it difficult. Yeah.
So that you should be able to coach anybody, I agree with. You should coach everybody, I disagree with. Right. And I don't think that's what they were saying based on a whole bunch of things. But that the ability to cross-contextualize and leverage the questioning power of coaching, ideally, like, and I have, at last count, and there's more in there now, I had 168 coaching models and frameworks that I use in my coaching practice.
We have we have so many different models.
We have so many, but all of them. So I could pick any one of them and apply it to different contexts. So if we're coaching, our frameworks across contextualizing. If we're mentoring, so this morning I have been working on creating a handout for my VIP clients on how to create content effortlessly, leveraging your uniqueness. And this is why I'm so ranty about the uniqueness.
That's why you're so ranty about it right now.
And so, but that can't be cross-contextualized. This framework that I've got is very specific to, this is how you create content for coaches, course creators, whatever. Right. That to me is not coaching. That is mentoring. Yeah, that really is or consulting, depending on which angle. So have I got the results? Somewhat. Have I got the results enough that I'm willing to call myself a mentor? Probably not, but I have got a fucking solid system. And so I would say I'm a consultant in that space.
Okay. And I mean, I was going to say with me, I mean, I got introduced to you and I hired you as a book coach. I hired you to write a book. You provided the framework. Yep. And it's you made this comment a while back, right? It's an interesting thing because I hired you to provide the framework for writing the book, but whose responsibility was it to actually write the book?
Yours.
Mine, right? Yeah. And I did it. And even in where I would have typically failed, I saw the potential of failure arising and I did what I needed to do so I didn't fail. And like the book is now 2/3 edited.
I would see myself in the role that I've played with you in the book writing, more in that mentor consultant role. So they're using the system, and we have a system. There was a checklist, and
it's a great. I have the checklist. I have 2 more books now in like literally using that same system. I have 2 more books framed out. And if anybody out there, right, I keep reading these things about people wanting to write a book. If anyone out there wants to write a book, this is the second book I've written.
So not if anyone. And this is where I narrow down. So I could help anybody write a book. I will help people with a transformational intention write a book. Okay. If someone out there is wanting to write a book, I'll share with them the system. By all means, message me and I will hook them up with the people that do the more transactional side of things and set that up. The people that I work with have to be here to transform the world on some level, not just make money. For me, business is about passion, purpose, and profits are a sideline, as opposed to profits being the primary focus. And so if you are someone that's passionate and purposeful, reach out. If you're someone that's driven for profits and profits solely, like obviously we're going to make profits out of this and you're going to make money from your book, but Yeah, profits only. So not anyone, that very narrow niche.
And that's very true, because I have to think about it, right? Profits are going to be the trailing measure of me being in my passion.
Yeah,
And
they're not
one
the
of my
primary
coaches,
purpose.
it's not the primary purpose. My primary purpose, with the next book, my primary purpose, well, with this book, my primary purpose is to assist people, because the system that
Well, and you saw a huge gap in the market. You went out and
somebody just texted me with the funniest message. One of my clients, and I have a brand new client, they're sending me a check and they're saying, okay, I'm going to overnight that check so you can actually afford a razor.
I love it.
I love my people. I just love my people.
Yeah, and that's
What's
what
wrong?
we want with our clients. We
Right.
want to find our people. Someone messaged me yesterday and said, I was referred to you by so-and-so. And I'm like, great. Where's this going to go? And I chatted to them. It was probably 20 or 30 minutes. We chatted via text, just in Messenger. And then they said something. I'm like, you might be my people, because the person that referred is not my people. And I'm like, And so, and then we got on, oh my God, was this person my person? Like, holy shit, the universe conspiring, to the point that they had seen wisteria for the first time in their garden the day before. So for anyone that doesn't know, my business name is Wisteria Enterprises. And so they'd been out in their garden with their kid, and their kid had said, what's that? And he said, that is wisteria from Australia. So he'd narrowed it down. And then I sent him my email. It's like amy@wistariaenterprises.com.au, which is the Australian. It's like, oh, look, you're Amy with wisteria from Australia. Like the mind fuck of that.
The synchronicities. Let's say synchronicities, right?
That's a better word.
Yeah, synchronicities, because I have to tell you, but for those that are out there, my second book is going to be a book about healing trauma.
Yeah.
And it's because that I have one of my life achievements, and I figured this out about a week ago, is to implement methods of self-healing that empowers the traumatized. And
yes, absolutely.
I have to tell you, I love that statement, because that statement, like, what would life be like if whether you're watching this or listening to this, if you have had a trauma that has actually sidelined you in life, what if you can actually pick a book up and potentially get a lot of the ways through the trauma? And there's going to be the wording there, because there are some traumas that do need professional help.
Yep.
But for most people, most of my coaching, go ahead.
Well, what I'm seeing is you've embraced your uniqueness in that moment. It's like, this is my point of difference. This is what I do so well. This is your superpower.
Right. And I don't need a razor.
No, well, maybe. I don't know if you saw, I don't know where here they are. My husband got me Lego dudes I'm hoping it'll show up without me having to turn off my background. But he's got fuzz.
That's true. He does. Mike has fuzz.
Mike has fuzz, and the little Lego dude, and I'm just like, and my real Mike, who probably can hear me through that door, also has fuzz, and I think he can do with the razor too.
Okay,
you can have fuzz. I don't have to kiss your face.
Yeah, Kevin, personal message. Thank you. My face is fine.
So now that you've embraced that uniqueness and you're getting clearer on your philosophy and what it is that you stand for, now you can start to systemize. But what I see too many coaches doing is, I need a system, and they borrow someone else's, and they look cookie cutter, and it's so frustrating to see someone trying to scale somebody else's philosophy, seeing someone trying to scale stuff that they're saying. But so when you spoke just then and talked about your ability to empower people with trauma, the conviction, the authority, the integrity, the authenticity radiates from you. Well, and no one is going to be able to question whether that's true for you or not. They'll question whether it's true for themselves or not. There'll be plenty of people that question whether it's true for them or not, whatever. But for you, that conviction and your lit upness.
But I know I can do it. I've been doing it in workshops.
Yes.
I worked in one of the top 5 recovery centers. I have led my work to over 30,000 people. One of the things, and I know this is an odd thing to say, but I love the experience of creating the space for people to step into their healing with their trauma. Because I don't do the healing, but it took me so long to self-heal that now, why not put this together? We are in a post-COVID world that it's like, there is so much trauma out there.
Yeah. So for you, I see that you've stepped into that unique, and you, like, again, your conviction. And for anyone listening, because I know we started with talking about like our histories and how long we've been doing this, we all have that history. So so anyone listening going, I haven't been a coach for more than 2 weeks, you just haven't recognized it yet. Exactly. No one comes into this profession. I look back, there was an instance, I'm trying to think how old I was. I think I was in year 5 or 6 at school. So I would have been, I don't know what that makes me, 10 or 11 or something. And I don't actually remember the moment, but I remember the moment after. And so there's this mother approaching me, and someone else's mother approaching me. Did you talk to my daughter about sex? And I'm like, yes. And I'm shrinking. I'm like, fuck, I'm in trouble. And her entire demeanor shifted, and she's like, thank you so much. Now I don't have to. I'm thinking I'm in trouble. The tone and the energy and whether that's just because I was small and that was normally what I got from this, but that for me was a moment. So
I call that a significant emotional event. It's an
absolutely
defining moment. It's when you knew you could make a difference.
Absolutely. And so the kid, like I said, I don't remember the moment exactly with the little girl. I just remember that moment of, and that gratitude so that she didn't have to do it. And so I think we'd been on the bus and there was the word sex written on the back of the chair, as you get on school buses. I don't know whether you still do. But back when I was a kid, the buses were not particularly... I don't get on school buses
anymore.
No, I don't get on school buses anymore either. But the bus my kids catch, so we had like rickety old seats with wooden backgrounds, and you could ride on them. They were not particularly comfortable. The school bus my kids catch is like aeroplane seats, and they're fully padded, and there's armrests and there's seat belts, and
that's a whole nother show on how easy they have it, and boy, how tough we had it back when we were kids.
Well, I'm just thinking it was really easy to ride on the back of the wooden seats because it was wooden. I don't know that you could ride on the back of the current seats as easily because they're fabric and cushioning is like trying to ride on a pillow kind of thing. But yeah, so she'd asked about it and I just explained it through my lens at whatever age it was. And my family was quite open about that kind of stuff. We had a book called, so I've got what to expect when you're expecting, which is not the one I'm thinking of, but it's like this hormone change book. I'll have to look it up and put it in the comments. It's the most hilarious book. It probably is out of print now and they won't print it anymore.
Right.
Where Did I Come From? It was called Where Did I Come From? And it was this breakdown of the mechanics of reproduction. And so it didn't go into sexuality, it didn't go into the sexual dynamics, but just this breakdown of reproduction. So I just explained that, like, where did we come from? Well, we come from, there's a man and a woman and blah, blah, blah. Everyone knows the story.
Yep.
And back in 1988 or whatever it was, that was the simplicity of the story. There weren't test tubes, there weren't IVF. Like it was simplistic. Yeah. There's a man and a woman, they have sex, you get a baby.
Yes.
Far less complicated than it is now.
Right.
But in that moment, I shared insights, I listened, I asked questions. I remember calibrating that little girl. So she's, what is this? And my first question is, how much do you know? What do you know about this? Where are you starting from? Which
So
is
you were a coach
coaching
back then.
101. That's what I'm
that is
saying. Like, it's
right.
just innate in me.
Mhm.
Now I've learned to hone it and I've learned to refine it. But for anyone listening that thinks they haven't been doing this, think back. You've been doing this on some level. Like, I can trace that back to when I was 11. I can also trace back some of my parts integration work to when I was 5 or 6 and talking to my sister about the people in our heads. And so I'm not going to go too deep into that, but we've all been doing this far longer than we know.
And often, I mean, now that you think about it, my second job, I was a pizza delivery person. I was the first pizza delivery. We were the first organization to do pizza delivery in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And let me tell you, customers, that is where I learned customer service.
Yeah.
Because back, and this is going to date back in 1978, when the minimum wage was $2 and I think 35 cents.
I'll just sit here quietly and not let you know that I wasn't even born yet.
I'm not, you weren't even a gleam in your parents' eyes, right?
I don't even think they may have been married.
Yeah.
But only may.
The thing was, though, is that back then I used to, on Friday and Saturday nights, because I got to work one or the other, the tips that I got were anywhere from $75 to $150 for, this was back when gas was under $1.
That's phenomenal.
But I learned very, very quickly about customer satisfaction. Now, of course, you know, there was a thing about getting the pizzas to somebody in a very timely manner. Of course, it did not hurt that I owned a 1969 Firebird with a 350cc engine and a 400 turbo hydromatic transmission that looked really nice. So on Friday and Saturday nights, I got to cruise the strip and I got to drag race and I got to do everything while working. And
so how do we find our
customer
uniqueness?
Satisfaction? Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we find our uniqueness, to use your term? Look for the significant emotional events.
Yeah. So if you also go back, when I was 9, I was molested by a 16-year-old girl. And then when I was 11, 12, I was left at the home of a pedophile for 3 weeks while my parents were in Europe. That created so much trauma. And
so you have lived the breaking free of trauma.
Yeah, I've lived, and I can say it. I mean, I used to, if you look at addiction recovery, oftentimes at the root of addiction recovery is severe trauma that basically people, quite literally, they use the alcohol, the drugs, the gambling, the sex, all that stuff. They use that to hide the pain of what happened, right? The person that messaged me saying that I need a razor, thank you, kind sir. He was actually, I have a bunch of miracles, but he's my miracle of miracles. Yeah. And I don't think, since I didn't say his name or anything, he had a specific emotional event that for 23 years, he did not have a night without nightmares.
Yeah.
Which
and
he
there will
became
be
an addict. Yeah. But in 45 minutes, we had one session in 45 minutes. Since then, he has yet to have a nightmare.
Yeah. So for a lot of us, our significant emotional events, or my language around it is defining moments.
Yes.
Which I think comes from Dr. Phil's book. Like, what reference is that? I don't know. Anyway. Some of us will turn those significant emotional events into our trauma and create meanings around them that keeps us stuck. Some of us, we got them. So that moment with that little girl from my childhood, that came up when I was looking for the reference points of where have I been coaching, where have I been doing all of this stuff. So it's a significant emotional event in that I remember it, and it definitely shaped me somewhat. But it's not one I remembered until I was specifically looking for what are the things that make me unique, different, and special. Like rather than, and I see this too often with coaching as well, we focus on the what makes you broken. And the coaches create meanings. So I was chatting with a friend the other day, and she, as a child, she remembers being isolated as a child. So she was in her own space, she was doing her own thing, and she talked about, so defining moments is a fairly common practice in at least the coaching world that I'm in, to look for those defining moments. What do you remember? What was the significant emotional events? When did you first learn that? All those kinds of questions. She'd unpacked this moment with a coach, and the coach had told her you were neglected. And she bought into this being neglected. Anyway, we were talking about it the other day in a human design reading unpack. And I was looking at her profile, and I didn't know this story before I was doing the unpack. And I said, you probably liked playing on your own as a kid. Should I played on my own a lot because I was neglected? And I said, I don't know that you were neglected. Think back to that moment. And did you feel neglected in the moment, or did you feel joy and peace and love and were happy being your unique self out on your own? She's like, the latter. But I worked with, and I knew the coach she'd worked with, and she said, I'd worked with so-and-so, and she told me it was because I was neglected. And I'm like, yeah, but she told you were neglected rather than you felt neglected, or you gave it the meaning of neglect until in adult times. And so coaches looking for problems as opposed to looking for uniqueness is a whole other conversation.
Oh, that is a whole other conversation. So it's like, so one of the ways to really begin to define where your specialty is by looking, because obviously I looked at my trauma as opposed to looking at my uniqueness.
Yeah, and we can look at either. Either will give us our point of differentiation. Now you have transformed your trauma into a really great empowerment story. I've seen other coaches stay stuck in their trauma because that's then how they define themselves as a coach. You don't define yourself by your trauma anymore. It's this freedom and this, I broke free of this.
Well, even the book, right? For those of you that do not know, last November, I discovered that I have a 36-year-old son. And literally everything is really going against us developing a relationship right now. So what I did is I turned around and wrote a book on how to create effective communication that I am utilizing. Our relationship is growing very slowly, but I want to be solution focused in life.
Yeah. You also saw a huge gap in that market. So you had a problem that needed, that you wanted to solve, and you just went, well, I'm going to create the solution for it and share it with others.
Or a solution, not the solution,
a solution for it.
But here's the thing, if you're a male and if you have discovered that you have a biological offspring that you had no idea of, there is literally no resources out there. There's a lot of resources for adopted people, but for especially male fathers, there's not much out there.
Well, and I think we go back to the how do babies happen?
How do babies
So it is possible for a man to not know that he is a father. It is not possible for a woman to not know that she is a mother.
Very, very true.
I don't know if I got my double negatives right in that, but I trust the message came through.
No, the message came through perfectly. And the other thing, right, for those of you interested, the day that I began communication with my son, the biological mother called. And one of the first things she said is, you will never develop a relationship with him.
Which is her projecting and pushing. And she's hidden it from him for so long.
Oh, yeah.
So my point, though, is it's not possible for a woman to not know she has a child out there. Unless there's massive amnesia, like there's got to be some level of like massive significant trauma on top of the experience to get to that memory erasure. The the lack of memory. Let's just
lack of
change the
memory.
way I'm trying to say that completely.
The memory erasure.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. But for you, you didn't know.
No clue.
And so there was no clue, and then it came out of the blue, and that's where support is needed for most people.
Well, and the other thing is had I known, I would have fought to be a part of his life.
Yes. Yeah.
I have no children. My last marriage, which she was very emotionally abusive. I had 2 stepdaughters. The moment we separated, I was forbidden from ever communicating so that she could portray that I was the problem, blah, blah, blah. So, and yet now the only thing we can really develop is an adult to adult relationship.
Yeah. Well, there's no going back in time.
Nope.
What you saw, though, was a gap, and what you were able to do because of all of the stuff that you have done, you handling that, navigating that seemingly milder trauma, and I don't like putting mild or harsher trauma, but the less significant, the less deep for you.
Yeah.
Though for other people, that would be quite a deep trauma because they don't have the tools and the skills. And what you're able to provide is those tools and the skills. And what you're shifting to now is systemizing it because you found your uniqueness, you found your superpower, you found your strength. Now is the perfect time for you to scale and systemize. What I see too many other coaches doing is trying to get the scale and the systemizing in before they found their specialty. And
yes.
Specialty is not a word I would normally use. It's your word coming through.
Well,
but before they found their uniqueness, before they found their power, before whatever it is that we want to call it.
Yeah, before they found the fuel. I mean, I loved how you put you. I always think of you're opening my eyes because I always used to think of significant emotional events as the negative things that happened. Your example is the perfect example of a true growth moment. Yeah. And these growth moments define you. I mean, and I'm sitting here in my head, and I remember when I was in college from a freshman to my sophomore year, I actually worked as a counselor in a Bluebird camp, in a Girl Scout camp. And
I am still listening to you. I'm just looking for the book that I want to pull out the other pieces. That's what I'm doing. There it is.
So for 6 weeks of the summer, we had, first, second, third grade boys. And then the rest of the summer was all women. And that is when I really was also coaching, because anytime in the camp, there was a problem with one of the young ladies, because I just remember they were in a tent and I was told, you have to look for this one. She's being picked on. I went in there for like an evening, read a book kind of thing. And I sat on her bed, and in the council, this was in a different time when there was no suspect, but I got to make a difference for not only that young female, but for everybody else in there. And back then I was a coach.
Yes, absolutely. So there will be defining moments that are greatly beneficial to us and shape us. And I think too often we get consumed with what's wrong with us and not looking for what's right with us. So looking for our uniqueness starts by noticing the differences and then seeing the positives in that. I was looking for Dr. Phil's book. So it's called Dr. Phil. It's called Self Matters by Dr. Phil. It's one of my first introductions to personal development. What I was looking for, so he talks about 10 defining moments, which are the significant emotional events, 7 critical choice points, and 5 pivotal people.
Oh, wow.
And it's a book I love. It's one that I come back to. I don't know how long this book has been on my shelf. It is literally one of the very first personal development books that I got many, many years ago when I still loved watching. So we're going way back in time to when I loved watching Dr. Phil, Jerry Springer, Judge Judy, all of those drama-based shows.
Oh my gosh.
That I can't watch more than about 30 seconds of now without wanting to escape.
Maturity.
There's still a piece of me that does love the drama. I must admit, there's I don't know what her name is, but when I'm flicking through Facebook Reels, there's a judge that comes up. I think because I've been looking at the biological stuff for you, and so it is purely
the one about the parents, about whether a parent is
it's purely like it's DNA testing and confirming whether someone's a parent or not. And so it hasn't come up for a while because I haven't done any research with relationships. When we started working together, I was doing a little bit of research just so I had a little bit of awareness of what was out there and playing with that. But I like the drama, and on Facebook Reels, it's 60 seconds and then I move on to the next thing. I don't think I could do more than about 60 seconds of it, but I do like a good drama. I'm more than content to have a good drama. But these moments, so what often happens, and I've had this myself as a client, it's like, what are the moments that hurt you? What are the moments where you were scared? What are the moments where you felt fear? What are the moments where you felt ashamed or guilty or whatever it is? What we want to do to find our superpowers and our uniqueness, what are the moments where we were lit up? What are the moments where we were shining? What are the moments where we did something? Like that moment talking to that little girl, I calibrated her. I didn't share everything I knew about sex with her. I held back a lot. And then what I remember most is that moment with the mom. But that moment, that is a defining moment because that is where I started pacing. That is where I started, like I paced the client. I calibrated her. When did I first start pace leading clients? When I was 7. Now, did I need to be retrained in that when I was 30 something? Absolutely, because I'd forgotten and I was arrogant and I was pushy. But in that moment, I knew to only share enough to answer her questions. Partly because I didn't want to get in trouble from the mum, but also the calibration.
That's brilliant. And in our trauma-focused culture, we're so focused on the negative.
Yeah.
What I really love about this is the significant emotional events that were positive, that made a difference, that boosted your confidence. Because I would have, to me, that's a complete paradigm shift. It's now looking at, because it's funny, because like one of those 5 peoples, I used to have a science teacher called Dr. Gerlitz, that was his name. And when I was in all of my troubles as a result of everything that came up, with inside of my own head, and of course it came out in my school performance. He actually made me a teacher's assistant, and he worked with me in the most beautiful and unique way to build my confidence. And
so he would definitely be a pivotal person for you.
Yeah, one of those top 5.
Yeah. And so interestingly, with the pivotal people, you've gone to the people that have served you and supported you. Your abusers were also pivotal people.
Oh yeah. My abuser is most definitely, because had I say this and not so jokingly, but had I not been abused, I would be a veterinarian in the state of Iowa with 4 kids, all of them having gone off to college now. But that so profoundly shifted the direction of my life.
Yeah. And then there's the critical choice points. So those moments when we make a choice. So at the end of school, I became a knife salesman or a knife consultant, and I went out and I had the best time doing that. Door-to-door knife salesman.
So did I. Ours was cutlery and fine china for young ladies that had just graduated. And this is back in 1980. I almost won a trip to Hawaii.
So I did get the incentive trip. So the 12-month incentive trip I earned in 3 months at 17 with no car. So door-to-door knife salesman, I was literally walking to the houses, sometimes up to 10 kilometers from the train station, in high heels and a red suit in summer. There's a defining moment for you as well.
That is a defining moment.
I used to have the suit in my cupboard. It hasn't fitted for quite some time now, and I did let it go not that long ago. But that moment, so I was doing that, and I was doing amazingly at it. I was doing really well with it. I don't know what I was doing, but some kind of transition to go to uni. And we had like a 3-week transition course or something. We each had to get up and do a 20-minute presentation. I got up, I did the knife presentation, did like $3,000 worth of sales from that presentation, not meaning to. Like, I was in a room, all we had to do was present, and like it was public speaking practice stuff. So I was doing really well in that, but I had my parents in the back of my mind saying, you need a safe, secure job. You need to do something more secure. And so I went to nursing school. I became a registered nurse. I got my degree, and that is a critical choice point where I didn't listen to me, and I listened to my parents. Now, I wouldn't change a thing, but that is a critical choice point for me. And so the other one that comes up is when I quit. So direct sales business, I just earned the incentive trip. I had the fastest growing team in New South Wales and probably actually all of Australia. I can't quite remember. I was doing amazingly. I held the record for the most recruits in a month. My sales were up there. On paper, I had everything. And I went to the retreat, or I went to the weekend. It wasn't actually the retreat. So the retreat that I earned, there was a little bit of a pay you had to go. So I couldn't go to that. But I went away to this weekend, popped up in my memories the other day. And I sat down with the owner of the company, and we had this conversation. He and I were on completely different planets. And I realized in that moment, I was in the wrong place. And I thought, that's all right. I can make this work. I can do this. And I pushed through. I pushed through for about 2 or 3 weeks after I got home. And I'm in the wrong place. And I had no idea what the right place was. But I knew I was in the wrong place. So generally in those direct sales consulting roles, you just drop off. If you don't do your sales, they discontinue it. You just let it drop off. I actively sent a letter of resignation and said, I want you to immediately terminate my consultancy and move my team. So it would have taken 3 months for me to drop off sales wise. And I didn't want my team hanging in limbo for 3 months. So it was for them and I didn't want myself hanging in limbo. I'd made the decision, and I knew that every voice around me was going to question it. So my husband was the only one. He's like, what are you doing? He did have that, like, what are you doing? I said, I don't know. And he said, I don't care. I'm here for you. One of those moments that is why I keep
that's
him.
a defining moment with him.
It's why I keep him. Because it doesn't matter what I do. He said, I have no idea what you're doing, but I'm here for you. And he doesn't use that language, but that was the energy of it.
See, we have such different, my last ex-wife, 8 years ago, this Friday is when I had my cancer tumor.
There is an ex.
There's a reason
that I've still got him.
Many like 8 years ago, I had 8 years ago on St. Paddy's Day, my tumor was removed. When I was defined, she's like, you cannot tell anybody you have cancer. You have to keep it a secret. You're not going to be able to coach. There's so much guilt and shame. And when I posted on Facebook, she was so angry. But then a little bit later, she's like, you owe me your life. If you wouldn't have had my insurance, you would be dead. So you owe me your part of the reason she's the ex. I did not realize this closet narcissist that was very emotionally abusive. Yeah. But it's like, so it's like
very different experiences.
It's the tale of two experiences.
In that moment. So he supported me, but everyone else is like, why would you do that? You've got everything. Why would you leave? My manager got in the car. So she rang me because I carbon copied her on the email. She said, what have you done? I said, I sent in my resignation. And she's like, we need to talk. I said, all right. And she got in the car. She drove an hour and a half to my kitchen bench. And we both cried at the kitchen bench. And she's losing one of the best team members Now her and I are still friends. We still chat. Not as frequently as we used to, but we do still chat. She is definitely one of my pivotal people. Absolutely one of my pivotal people. But she couldn't quite bring herself to just say, I'm here for you and I've got you. She's like, I really wish you weren't leaving. I understand. Like, I don't understand. And I'm like, I don't understand. I got no idea why. But I just knew. Her manager rang me and went the complete other tact and went, you will regret this. You will, in 5 years' time, this will be the worst decision you've ever made. And I'm like, no, I'm good with it. So that critical choice point, though, that point where I closed off that door, opened the door to me creating my planners, which I don't know whether I changed that choice or not, but they still all sit in my garage in boxes. They didn't go anywhere. They didn't do anything. I've got lots of them. Having opened that door, though, I then opened the door to coaching and I'm here. I have no regrets, none whatsoever.
Yeah. So for those listening, this would be a great exercise for you to actually look at I'm just going to like the positive, significant emotional events, as well as the not so positive.
Yeah, look at both. All of them have gifts.
But and I want to say and, not but, and the positive can show you where you have shined long before you even knew what shining was.
That's it. That's it. And if we can tap into that uniqueness,
yes,
identify our point of difference, identify what makes us stand apart, not stand out, but stand apart. So stand out is bigger, better, bolder, louder, noisy, whatever. Different is what we're looking for in this. When you know your point of difference, then start to scale, but forget scaling until you know your point of difference.
Yeah. And
by all means, make money as you find your point of difference.
And by all means, right? Well, by all means, be in your passion. One of the things that I will say is your birthright is an amazing life. And if you are not living in your passion, this episode today will show you some very simple things that you can begin to understand how you are amazing, how you are incredible. And I really like you have, because I'm always like, well, it's like these are defining moments. But yet today I've learned that there are the positive things that also show you where and what your gifts are.
Yes. Yeah. And they'll be there. It's just allowing your mind, asking the question and bringing it forth. And then looking for the choice points that you've made over the years.
Yeah.
And they will tell you a lot. So that choice point where I chose to do nursing instead of the job that I loved showed me that at that point in time, I was more compliant and I was more worried about security and safety because I had taken on the worries of my family.
Yeah.
Whereas when I moved from the job that was perfectly secure and stable and growing and all of those things to the I don't know what I'm going to do, those values had shifted. And noticing those value shifts, but the consistency there was I am strong-willed and I will find a way. Like that hasn't changed since I was 2.
No.
So we want to look at our inconsistencies and we want to look at our consistencies as well. And that's one of the things that I love in human design is it points out our consistencies and our inconsistencies. So this exercise coupled with, there's a whole range of stuff. And I know you've got a whole range of tools as well, Jim. If anyone is looking for support with that, reach out to either Jim or I to get support with finding what is that uniqueness, what is that point of difference that you bring so that you can own it. Because the more we own our point of difference, the easier it is to show up to conversations like this, the easier it is to promote our business, the easier it is just to show up to life in general.
And for those of you, for everybody listening, I got to tell you, we picked our topic. I actually think we went live without me knowing. You were so fired up about something. I'm like, okay, that's what we're going to talk about today. And quite literally, I jumped in because one of the things that I know is on Empower Hour, you are going to get intensity. You're going to get raw. You're going to learn some things about yourself. Like today, I learned I need to look at these significant emotional events that were positive, that were life shifting toward the better.
Yeah, you and I are constantly learning from each other.
Yes, we are.
There's always stuff that we're learning from each other. And the benefit of Empower Hour is that you get to see our learning in real time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Where both of us are content and comfortable enough in our own uniqueness, in our own power, to know that we can show up and continue learning and be vulnerable and bring all of us to play in this space.
We could show up without a defined topic and still talk for an hour and have a good time doing it.
Yeah. I mean, we did define a topic. It's like we're going to talk about uniqueness and sustainability and how most coaches have got it backwards. And then we talked about all of this other cool stuff.
I know. And I got to write this down because I got to do the show notes for YouTube channel. Uniqueness and sustainability.
Yeah. So when we own our uniqueness, then we want to start making that sustainable, because otherwise what we're making sustainable is the flawed paradigm. I'm speaking without thinking. I'm like, fuck, that was good. This is one of those. Yeah,
that was kind of good. It's like, oh. Well, there are so many coaches out there that follow the patterns of others and wonder why they don't have the success of the person they're following.
Because like they are not using the system for them.
Well, and they're not using their unique gifts.
Not using their unique gifts.
Every single coach has a unique gift. And
every single person has a unique gift. That was going to be
the next point I was going to make. Even if you're not a coach, if you are at an age you're listening to this, the thing is discovering your unique. It's funny because I had a client, I have a very young client, and we're actually kind of wrapping up. And he actually said, he says, and this hasn't, and the whole time we worked together, he says, I'd kind of like to learn how to cook. And I was like, I jumped on it and I'm like, you need to cook for your family. And Sunday, I got a picture of the first meal that he cooked.
I love
it. I texted his parents and they're like, wow, they're like, this is so cool. And it's like, and this didn't come until really literally the last session.
Yeah, be starting to trust. So one of the things, when we trust in our uniqueness, we're willing to explore new things. Mm-hmm. And in exploring new things, we find other gifts and we find other passions and we find so much.
Yeah.
But it's not until we've got that willingness to recognize that there's going to be some things that we're really good at, and there are going to be some things that we really suck at. Right. And in owning our uniqueness, we own both sides of that coin. There are spelling. I was doing something with a client the other day and I tried to type in opportunities and I can't spell. So there's a bunch of words I use all the time: beliefs, experiences, opportunities, and I can't spell any of them.
But you never let it get you down. I've been there. It's like,
no. Well, so my client the other day, so I was in her website I was creating a tab, and she's like, you cannot call it opportunities. I'm like, huh? She's like, you cannot spell that word. And I'm like, oh, no, you're right, I can't. So I will own, that is one of my points. There are plenty of people out there that can spell opportunities. I'm consistent in how I misspell it. I am very consistent. All of them are spelled consistently the same. My husband the other day wrote experiences on he's like, every time I read the word experience, proofreading one of my books, every time I read the word experiences, you have to put $5 in this jar. I said, every time you read the word experiences spelt that way in my book where I've typed it, I will put $5 in that jar, because I guarantee you none of them are spelled correctly. But that is my point of difference.
Yes.
And there's several moments that you've witnessed over the last couple of weeks, Jim, where I just own my point of difference. Mm-hmm. Inclusivity is not my strength. Mm-hmm. Inclusivity is definitely not my strength. I don't want to say, or lack of inclusivity, but I don't want to say that it's a weakness. It's just a point of difference. And the other day, I can't remember if you were still there at 3P Club the other day when I said, I feel like I should be inclusive right now because I was facilitating a discussion. I feel like I should be inclusive right now. And stop it, we're going to do it my way. And one of the other people in the room said, I love how much you own that. I own my flaws and my faults, or what other people have told me as flaws and faults, as much as I own my gifts. And when we can do that, that's where we can start creating sustainability, because we know our consistencies and our inconsistencies.
And that's called confidence.
Yeah.
That's just plain confidence. It's like, and that's also knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, and not shying away from the weaknesses. It's perfect.
Yeah. So and for me, misspelling words is a consistency.
Yeah.
So if I know what is consistent for me, now I could learn to spell. You can hear in my tone that's not going to happen. Like it's
not going to happen.
And what difference does it make? So my client said the other day, you can't use the word opportunities. I'm like, all right, well, I'll use the word options. Can I spell? And interestingly, I then said out loud, can I spell options? She's like, yes, you can spell options.
So have you ever heard of a guy named Mark Twain?
I do believe so.
And do you know one of the many things that he said?
Oh, I don't know where you're going. You have to tell me, Jim.
He says it's a darn fool that can only spell a word one way. When
I used
to do workshops and I was up and I would write, I oftentimes will spell it wrong. I would say, well, Mark Twain quote, everybody would laugh. And it's like, it's not a big deal.
No, it doesn't have to be a big deal.
No.
And when we can own that is part of our uniqueness.
Mm-hmm.
So my inability to spell, my lower levels of inclusivity, all of these things are part of my consistencies and who I am. And when we love that, then we can make our business sustainable. And I just outsource the spelling. That's why I have a husband. That's
why we have Google.
Check.
And that's why we have
spell check.
That's why we have an editor.
Yes. So I hope those of you listening have worked out why I believe uniqueness needs to come before scaling, uniqueness before sustainability, uniqueness before systems, uniqueness before any of that. I really hope that landed. And
that is
we're applying it to coaching, but I think it applies. I think it applies everywhere.
It applies to life.
Yeah.
Yep. So you've been listening to Empower Hour. Right. I love our conversations too, especially when we don't plan them.
Yeah. We've got another hour in us easily.
Oh my gosh, I know. You have been listening to Empower Hour. Join us probably around this time on my Facebook, or check out the Empower Hour on the YouTube. And the other thing I realized that I'm still paying for all my podcasting stuff. I'm going to take the recordings of these and just start throwing them into podcasts.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So thank you for listening, and we will see you next week. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you, Amy.